Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. I'm excited to be back here on the Imagine channel today. And all this month, Imagine is partnering with Clair stamps. Now today on this card, I'm going to be sharing with you how to create a background. And then with that background, I'm going to be making two different cards with it. I will be using this stamp from Clair Stamps, and I'm also using 3 different colors of green ink from Imagine to create my background. Now to get those colors coordinated, I like to use my swatches that I keep on a little ring here. They go all the way to the edge of the cardstock. That way I can place them up against each other and know that they really coordinate and the tones go well together. So starting off with that Born is the King stamp set, I loaded up all of the little leafy images that are included in that stamp set, the smaller ones. I loaded them all onto acrylic blocks. So there are quite a few of these. What I like to do when there are a lot of small images is load on the front and the back, especially when I'm creating a background like this, and I'll be stamping them kind of all at the same time, and I don't want to be switching out the stamps constantly. So I load them onto the front and back of my acrylic blocks. I've got all of my inks over there off to the side, and I keep the cap right next to each one so I know which color I'm dipping into. Now to start this background, I am working on white cardstock. This measures 4 inches by 5 1/4, so slightly smaller than an A2 size. And this is my one background that I am creating. I'm starting off with that darker color, the Northern Pine, and I'm stamping the larger branches, leafy images all over this background to start off with. Once I have those in, then I'm going to move to the smaller, shorter branches that are included in the set, and I'll move into those last 2 lighter colors. And I'll go back and forth in between those two, stamping different images or the different branches, going every which way, but connect those to those first darker branches that I stamped to create kind of a cluster of branches. This is a great way to use the same stamps over and over, but have them look different each and every time you stamp them. Alright, so there is the first round of stamping done. But I felt like on some of these clusters there was a little bit too much white space, so I went back in with those teeny tiny little branches that come in the stamp set and went between all 3 colors and just stamped those on a few of the clusters to fill in some of that white space and give it a little bit more color. Now here is a look at the finished background. This is great. You could use it on one card as is, but when I'm doing a background like this and I know I'm going to be cutting the center out of it like I'm doing here or cutting up the background, I like to find a way to use all the pieces. So that's what I'm doing today. I wanted to cut out the center of this and create an opening for my sentiment. So I'll do that with this oval die set from Waffle Flower, and I'll just run that through my die cutting machine. I like to use a piece of painter's tape to hold that in place. So I'm left with the piece I want to use, but I'm also left with that center oval, which I still want to use because I did spend the time stamping it. But let me start off with the first card, the one that I had imagined making. I didn't have a plan for the second one. It just kind of came together. So I am using the Waffle Flower die set that I used before. This is a nesting oval. I layered up the die I used to die cut the oval and one slightly larger and ran that through my die cutting machine with gold cardstock to create a little frame for that opening. I'll set that off to the side and I'm going to work on the background where my sentiment is going. That's going to be directly on the card base. I marked out that area just by placing that panel over the top of the card base and using a pencil. Then I'm using this brick stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'll just use some more of my dewdrops to blend that in. I'm using a jumbo ink dauber here. These are wonderful for really, really light blending and to have really great control. I'm using the Desert Sand Memento ink color in that dewdrop form, which is a super light ink. So along with that and that jumbo dauber, I have so much control over the amount of color because I wanted just the faintest hint of stenciling in the background. Now once that was done, I can erase my pencil line Then I'll place everything, even the panel over the top. I want to place that right in there so I can line up my sentiment in my Misty. I use that magnet to hold everything in place. Then I can pick up my sentiment once it's lined up and stamp that down with VersaFine Clair in Fallen Leaves. I like this ink. It's not black, it's not gray, but it's a super, super dark and rich brown color that almost is black, so it goes perfect with this color scheme. There's a closer look at that sentiment and the stenciling. Now, I wanted to add one of these little doves from the stamp set, and I wanted to add one on both cards, I ended up deciding. So I'm doing these both at the same time. I'm using my Misty to stamp them down, again using that Fallen Leaves. And I stamped 2 of those onto white cardstock. Now I heat set those before I decided to go in and add just a little bit of color to them. Again, going back to that desert sand and my jumbo ink dauber. This is going to allow me a lot of control and just the faintest hint of color on those doves so they're not stark white. I added just the tiniest bit of ink blending, then I fussy cut them right up to that cut line. Next, I'm going to go over those cut lines with a marker. This is the Memento marker. And because I used a brown ink, I'm using the rich cocoa marker to color on those cut lines so it kind of matches. There's a closer look at that dove. And again, I did those both at the same time, so I won't show you that on the second card, but know that I created 2 of those. Now it's time to put the card together. I went ahead and added that frame with some liquid glue. Then I'll pop up the entire panel over my sentiment on the card base, and I did that with foam tape. Finally, I'll add my little bird off to the left-hand side outside of that oval just for an added extra little touch. There's a look at the first card, completely done, but I still had that center that I wanted to use. Sometimes I just sit it off to the side of my desk, but to be quite honest, when I do that, I rarely ever go back and use those pieces. If I'm going to use that piece, I need to make a card right then while it's out. So I went ahead and die cut, again, with that slightly larger oval die. I die cut a piece of gold cardstock. This is going to be the same color scheme. I know it works because I did it on the first card, so I'll just keep with that on the second card. On that oval that I die cut from the center of the panel, I am going to put my sentiment. I want to heat emboss on this, so I prep my surface with my embossing bag, and I'm stamping down my sentiment from that Born as the King stamp set with Versamark ink. Then I'll be using this new embossing powder. This comes in a bag, which is super handy. I sprinkled some of that. This is gold, and then I can just dump it right back into the bag because it's such a small die cut, which is super convenient. Now, if there's any extra pieces, you can just dust those off with a paintbrush, and then I heat set it. Super simple and easy. This took no time at all. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit more pronounced, you could go back and do another stamping on top of that and layer up your embossing powder, but I thought one was good on my card. Now, for this background, I'm doing another stenciling area right on the card base, and this is just going to make my background not so stark. Now, I started off with rhubarb stock and my jumbo ink dauber, but I didn't feel like it was the right tone of red. It wasn't bright enough, so I came in and layered that up with a little bit of the ladybug ink. So if you're not happy with your stenciling or your color, I guess I should say the color choice, go on top with another tone of the same color and see if you can get it to work that way before you scrap it and start over with another color. This worked for me on this card really well and saved me a lot of time. I went ahead and attached those 2 die cuts together to mat that first one, added those to the card base, and then added my little bird, my little dove up there in the top left-hand corner. Again, I used all foam tape for that. There are my 2 cards, super simple and easy to do, and these took no time at all and only one background. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Happy crafting, everyone.